So the Ukraine war, another unintended consequence. Turns out, oh, Russia has all the fertilizer we need. U.S. quietly urges Russia fertilizer deals to unlock grain trade. So U.S. seeks to boost supplies amid sanctions. We're sanctioning Russia, yet we need Russia so much. Breadbasket to the world. Russia and Ukraine account for a quarter of the global grains trade. So 102 million tons of grain come from Russia and Ukraine. That's the black part, right? And let's see, how much from the United States? Does it say? U.S., 94 tons. So they have more grain than the United States. I was always told the United States was the breadbasket of the world. Turns out it's Ukraine and Russia. And, wow, that's a lot.
What did they think did they think they're going to do sanctions and all the countries were going to go in line and it was going to work that way?
You know what? I think they thought it through about as much as they thought through the Iraq war or the Afghanistan war. It doesn't matter. Let's just get it going. Right. The U.S. government is quietly encouraging agriculture and shipping companies to buy and carry more Russian fertilizer, according to people familiar with the efforts, as sanctions fears have led to a sharp drop in supplies, fueling spiraling global food costs. The effort is part of a complex and difficult negotiations underway involving the United Nations to boost deliveries of fertilizer, grain, and other farm products from Russia and Ukraine that have been disrupted by President Vladimir Putin's invasion of his southern neighbor. That's not what interrupted it. It wasn't, his invasion did not interrupt this. It was the United States sanctions and Ukraine mining their own harbor. Ukraine mined their own harbor, so now you can't get ships to go in there and get the grain. U.S. and European officials have accused the Kremlin of using food as a weapon, preventing Ukraine from exporting. Again, they mine their own harbor. Russia denies that even as it has attacked key ports, blaming the shipment disruptions on sanctions imposed by the U.S. and its allies over the invasion. The EU and the U.S. have built exemptions into their restrictions on doing business with Russia to allow trade in fertilizer, of which Moscow is a key global supplier. But many shippers, banks, and insurers have been staying away from the trade out of fear they could inadvertently follow the rules. Russian fertilizer exports are down 24% this year. U.S. officials, surprised by the extent of the caution, are in a seemingly paradoxical position of looking for ways to boost them. The U.S. push underlines the challenge facing Washington and its allies as they seek to increase pressure on Putin over his invasion, but also limit the collateral damage to a global economy, which is heavily dependent on commodity supplies from Russia, ranging from natural gas and oil to fertilizer and grains. Prices for all those have spiked further since the war started in February, a point Putin regularly makes in his public efforts to undermine support for sanctions. Washington sent a representative to UN-led talks in Moscow earlier this month on the supply issues. According to people familiar with the situation who spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss matters that aren't public, inadequate fertilizer deliveries this year could also affect next year's crops. The Kremlin, by the way, so they went to Moscow, they're going to Venezuela, they're going to Saudi Arabia. Do you remember when and they're saying they're doing diplomacy? You know what they're doing? Remember when diplomacy didn't mean begging? Because that's what they're doing. They're begging for oil. They're begging. Go ahead,
We
Kurt.
have to beg from a whole axis of evil.
That's right. From a whole axis of evil, we're begging. The Kremlin has called on the United States to provide assurances to buyers and shippers of its fertilizer and grain that they aren't subject to sanctions, suggesting it's a condition of any steps to unblock shipments of Ukrainian farm products now. Russia accounted for almost a fifth of the 2021 fertilizer exports. Well, look at that. So that's the whole world. That's Russia.
Are we out of potash?
I don't think so. More than 25 million tons of grain, sunflower oil, and other commodities are stuck in Ukraine because of security fears in the Black Sea ports. Security fear. They mine their own goddamn harbors. And shipping lanes traditionally used to carry them to global markets. Officials warn the situation will become more dire with the new harvest beginning. So there you go. Way to go, Joe Biden, Democrats, NATO. Way to go putting sanctions on Russian fertilizer. Jesus Christ. It's like they're punching themselves, and they wake up and they punch themselves in the dick every morning. And Americans, nobody I don't think is buying that this is Putin's fault. I think people, well, there's certainly anybody who votes for Joe Biden thinks that or watches MSNBC. But I don't think regular people are thinking that anymore. And when people can't make enough money to live, when people can't make enough money to feed their kids, when people can't make enough money to have a life and go on vacation, they're going to blame the people in power. The problem is the people in power are the same party. So they think they're voting for another party, and they're not. In China, they just have one party. So people actually get shit done when they demand it of their government. We demand it of our government. They go, it's the Republicans' fault. And the Republicans go, it's the Democrats' fault. And you keep voting them in and out every 2 to 4 years, and the shit keeps staying the same. Barack Obama and Donald Trump and Joe Biden are not different. George Bush, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, and Joe Biden are not different. They're the same. They represent the same class of people. They represent the same people who are pulling the strings in our economy and in our country. They're the same. And anybody telling you they're different is a chump or a liar or being paid to tell you that.
Jimmy, do you know I've been obsessed watching drill rap videos.
I don't know what that is.
It's like the most gangster rap of the
Oh, really?
kids.
Okay.
But it's like so now Crips and Bloods are so big and so many neighborhoods that a lot of times they'll get along better with each other, the Bloods and the Crips, than with other Crips. So they have a saying, red and blue makes green.
Oh, no kidding?
Doesn't that perfectly apply? Red and blue makes green. That's Democrats and Republicans.
Hey, we're doing stand updates. Salt Lake City, Las Vegas, Chicago, Sacramento, and then San Diego, where I'm taping my new special. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for all the tickets for all our live shows. We're coming to your town, maybe.